elections. Yesterday we discussed till as the 1909, the Government of India Act, which allowed the Indians to contest in elections, and people, they can cast their votes. They given as a separate electorates to the Muslims, through which the Muslim candidates from certain number of areas, where such of the areas whereas the Muslims, they live in a majority in certain number of areas of India, where only as a Muslim candidate they can contest in elections and elect their representatives. Now as a 1915, Gandhiji arrived from South Africa. It was largely due to him that the national movement turned into a genuine mass movement. Before coming to India, he had struggled to improve the conditions of Indians who were ill-treated in Africa. Gandhiji, he struggled for such people which were ill-treated in parts of South Africa. (1915). 1915. Gandhiji returned back to India. Yes. Here somewhere else. We are here. Gandhiji had struggled to improve the conditions of Indians who were treated badly by the racism by the whites in South Africa. He evolved the technique of a satyagraha or peaceful non-violent agitation. Before of it's in 1911, a darbar, a grand gathering, it was held in Delhi, note it down, in 1911, a darbar, D-U-R-B-A-R, darbar, a grand gathering was held in Delhi. In this occasion, King George V, existing monarch of England, King George V, commemorate the accession of British throne. The king and the queen attended the darbar, in which they announced that the shifting of British capital from Calcutta to Delhi. The darbar, which was organized in Delhi in 1911 to shift British capital of a British Empire, which was as the Calcutta, since Battle of Buxar towards the 1911, the capital of a British Empire, it was a Calcutta, shifted from Calcutta towards Delhi, for which as the gateway of India, it was built in Maharashtra. For the welcome of King George V, gateway of India, built in Maharashtra. Clear? This incident, it was as occurred in 1911. Afterwards, as Gandhiji returned back to India. When the Gandhiji returned back to India, he spent his first few years traveling all over the country. He established the Sabarmati Ashram. Gandhiji established Sabarmati Ashram at Ahmedabad. Sabarmati Ashram at Ahmedabad. Sabarmati Ashram at Ahmedabad. Gandhiji, when he returned back towards India in 1915, firstly, he spent the first few years for the traveling towards India to seeing as the conditions of Indians. Then he finally established as a Sabarmati Ashram at Ahmedabad. Gandhiji organized successful satyagraha campaigns in support of the indigo cultivators of Champaran. Indigo cultivators of Champaran in 1916. Gandhiji organized the first movement as a satyagraha campaign in support of indigo cultivators of Champaran in 1916. In next year to 1917, he started a movement in favor of mill workers of Ahmedabad. Gandhiji returned back towards India in 1915. Afterwards, he spent the first few years to seek the condition of Indians. And in year of 1916, he started a satyagraha in support of indigo cultivators. Those indigo cultivators which were bound to produce as indigo by the planters. And second, in 1917, he started a movement in favor of mill workers of Kheda, Kheda, mill workers of Ahmedabad and the peasants of Kheda. Clear? So what was as the ideology of Gandhiji? Gandhiji, he worked on a satyagraha. Satyagraha was a novel method of protest against. Gandhiji used the satyagraha. Gandhiji used as a satyagraha. Gandhiji used satyagraha as a method. It was a novel method of protest based on the ideals of truth and non-violence. Peaceful non-cooperation was another important means of protest against of the British injustice. In his opinion, Gandhiji's opinion, the British could not stay in India if Indians stopped cooperating with the government, which means as a non-cooperation. Non-cooperation included the boycott of all British institutions, offices, shops, and foreign goods. If Indians start to boycott those goods which manufactured in England and sold in Indian markets, either as a services or a goods, through which they can show their aggression against of the authorities. He insisted that social reforms be made a part of the freedom struggle. Gandhiji, he led a crusade to root out the social evils like as untouchability, which you learned in a previous chapters as a Gandhiji given as a term to the untouchables as Harijan, Harijan. Gandhiji initiated a constructive program for the economic upliftment of Indian villagers. He believed that Khadi would make the poor people as self-reliant. The All India Spinners Association of Khadi Bandar, it was set up in a different parts of the country. Gandhiji believed that the Hindu-Muslim unity, it was as essential for India to attain freedom from the foreign rule. He cooperated with the Khilafat movement, which was as a later in stage started by the Muslims. Till there, any questions? Till there, any questions? Till the time we are discussing till as the 1918. Because afterwards is 1919, the Rowlatt Act passed by the Britishers. 1919, Britishers passed as the Rowlatt Act, which is considered as a black act. So till there, any questions? Till there, any questions, any queries related with the matter? Related with the matter? Yes. The Rowlatt Act passed by the Britishers in 1919, which gave as the wide powers to the government to suppress Indian nationalists. The government could now arrest any person, it could arrest any person and imprison them without any trial. Means without any court case, a person can arrested by the company officials, by the British officials, and sent behind in a bars. That was as a Rowlatt Act, which allowed the Britishers, the company officials, the British officials, that if they consider any of an individual make the conspiracy against of the Britishers, on a doubt basis, they can arrest them and send behind the bars without trial. Due to this feature of this Rowlatt Act, the act was branded as a black act by the Indians. Black Act by the Indians. On 6th April 1919, 6th April 1919, Mahatma Gandhi launched an anti-Rowlatt satyagraha to oppose the act. In favor of this, on 13th April 1919, people of Amritsar, they held a meeting at a Jallianwala Bagh to protest the arrest of Dr. Satyapal and Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu. These two nationalist leaders were arrested by the Britishers on behalf of a Rowlatt Act. Dr. Satyapal and Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu, against of their arrest, the people assembled at a Jallianwala Bagh on 13th April 1919, the day of a Baisakhi in Punjab. On that day, General Dyer, the military commander of Amritsar, he ordered his troops to open fire upon the unarmed crowd. As a result, Hundreds of people were killed and wounded. Gandhiji lost faith in the goodwill of the British government, and Rabindranath Tagore, he returned the knighthood in protest. Means when that incident heard by the Rabindranath Tagore, he expressed their anger against of the British Empire to the returning, renounced his knighthood title. That knighthood title, which was as given by the Britishers for his creation of a Gitanjali. Knighthood title given by the Britishers, returned by the Rabindranath Tagore as a symbol of anger and protest against of such incident of Britishers, which done in a Jallianwala Bagh on 13th April 1919. During this act of a satyagraha, Rowlatt Satyagraha, all Hindus and Muslims collectively participated against Britishers, which showed as the uniform structure in India against of the British Empire. In next year, in 1920, Gandhiji started as the non-cooperation movement. After the First World War, it was outbreak in 1914. At that time, Britishers, they signed as the treaty with the Congress leaders that if the Indians, they will support, if Congress support the Britishers in a First World War in a European countries, under such circumstances, after the war, they will provide the political liberties to the Indians. First World War finished on 1918. It was started on 1914 towards as 18, but afterwards the Britishers refused. To fulfill those promises which were held by the company officials, British officials with Congress leaders, that after the First World War, they will give the political liberties to Indians, political liberties to Congress. So to show as the anger, after the First World War, Britain and its victorious countries, they partitioned the Turkey. Those countries which supported as England in the First World War, like France, US, they partitioned the Turkey. The Sultan of Turkey at that time, it was a Khalifa. Khalifa title given to the religious saints, Khalifa. The Turkish Sultan, it was known as a Khalifa, as the head of the Muslim world, was deprived of much of his authority and territories. In 1920, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali started as a movement against of the Britishers as Khilafat movement. Khilafat means non-cooperate. Do not ask the cooperate. Khilafat karni, opposition. Khilafat movement against of the Britishers. Muhammad Ali, Shaukat Ali started the Khilafat movement in 1920. They wanted to start a full-fledged non-cooperation against of the Britishers. So for this urge of a non-cooperation, Gandhiji started as a non-cooperation movement, which gained as the momentum in 1921 and 22. in all over the country. In this non-cooperation, all sections of a society took participate. Lawyers, they oppose the courts. Lawyers, they make vacant as the courts. Second, students, they left the schools and the colleges. Students left government schools and colleges. Students left schools and colleges. Schools and colleges. Third, common people started to organize as a bonfires of foreign clothes. Foreign clothes were publicly burnt by the people. Those clothes which were manufactured in England and sold in Indian markets, their bonfires organized in all over the country in a public places. Through this, as the people show their aggression. In a non-cooperation movement, rapidly gained the momentum. All the sections of society, they took part in this movement. Hundreds of lawyers, including the Motilal Nehru, C.R. Das, C. Rajgopalachari, Asaf Ali, Rajendra Prasad, gave up their legal practice, and British titles and legislative positions were surrendered. These were surrendered. On 5th February 1922, on 5th February 1922, the police fired at a group of peasants at Chauri Chaura. Group of peasants at Chauri Chaura. Group of peasants at Chauri Chaura. This is a village in Uttar Pradesh. In retaliation, the angry peasants burnt the local police station, causing the death of many policemen. When Mahatma Gandhi heard that news, he immediately suspended the non-cooperation movement. He immediately suspended the non-cooperation movement, means he returned the non-cooperation movement. That movement, which was as a started on 1921, it was as a finish on 10th March 1922. 1922. For such incident of a Chauri Chaura, Gandhiji was arrested and sentenced to the 6 years of imprisonment. 6 years of imprisonment. Till there, any questions? 6 years of imprisonment. It's due to as the incident of a Chauri Chaura, in which a people, angered farmers, they burnt alive the many policemen at a Chauri Chaura. At Chauri Chaura. Yes. Any queries? Any questions? Till there. Afterwards, the non-cooperation movement in the 1922, Congress leaders like Chittaranjan Das and Motilal Nehru, they argued that the party should fight elections, Congress should fight elections and enter in a legislative councils and influence the government. Policies from within. In December 1922, the leaders of Congress divided into two parts. One group was known as the pro-changers, One group was known as a pro-changers, and another group, it was known as a no-changers. No-changers. One group known as the pro-changers, and another group named as a no-changers. Pro-changers formed a party within the Congress. Pro-changers formed a party within the Congress known as the Swaraj Party. Known as Swaraj. Swaraj means as a freedom. Known as the Swaraj Party. Pro-changers within a Congress framed their own party named as a Swaraj Party. Another group within the Congress, including the Vallabhbhai Patel, which is known in Indian history as an Iron Man. Iron Man of India is a Vallabhbhai Patel, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, C. Raj Gopalachari, C. Raj Gopalachari. They were called as a no changers who decided to undertake constructive work in the villages. Constructive work in the villages. Constructive work in the villages. So till there, any questions? Constructive work in the villages. There were some other, yes, any questions? Yes, Cheshta, Navkaran, Manmeet, Parthiv, your mics are not connected. Parthiv Gupta, mics are still not connected. There were some other important events that happened during this tenure of 1922 towards 1927. 1927, the formation of a communist party on the ideas of a Russian Revolution. Russian Revolution held in 1917. 1917, on such ideas as a communist party set up in our country. Second, as a revolutionary activities continued in a country under leadership of Chandrasekhar Azad, Bhagat Singh, in which as one of the incident as a Kakori incident. Revolutionary leaders, they needs as a money for purchasing of arms and ammunition, for which as they looted as a Kakori train. Kakori train. That train which was carrying as the wealth of Britishers towards the Delhi. That train looted by the revolutionary leaders of Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, and Batukeshwar Dutt. They collectively as looted the train which was moving with the wealth of Britishers towards the Delhi. Moving the Britishers' wealth towards the Delhi. Clear? Towards the Delhi. So afterwards, in 1927, Mahatma Gandhi started as a civil disobedience movement. In November 1927, the British government appointed a 7-member commission under Sir John Simon. To study the working of the Government of India Act 1919. Government of India Act of 1919. But the Simon Commission, it had no Indian members. The Indian National Congress on December 1927 session held in Madras which now is presently known as Chennai, they resolved to boycott the commission, Simon Commission. February 1928, the protesters greeted the Simon Commission on its arrival with black flags and carrying the slogans of a Simon Go Back. That group of a rally, which was headed by the Lala Lajpat Rai, sustained the fatal injuries under the lathi charge by the police. Due to as the severe injuries, Lala Lajpat Rai left their heavenly abode. In 1928, the Motilal Nehru, it was drafted as the tentative Constitution of India. Tentative Constitution of India, which is known in history as the Nehru Report. It is known in history as the Nehru Report. In this report, the Congress demanded as a Purna Swaraj declaration, demanded as the complete independence from British rule. Complete independence from British rule. It was made and the Congress decided to launch a civil disobedience movement under Gandhiji on 1930. Non-cooperation was started in 1921 to the 22. Civil disobedience movement, a large-scale movement started by the Gandhiji. Civil disobedience movement in 1930. This civil disobedience movement, it was against of that act of Britishers, in which Britishers charged the more tax. They increased the tax upon a common items like as a salt. Britishers, they charge as the high tax upon the salt, a basic item of a salt. Then Gandhiji announced that he would break the salt law itself. Salt law. He would break as the salt law. In those days, the salt manufacturing was controlled by government. It was monopoly of the government. People had to pay a tax whenever they purchased the salt. On 12th March 1913, pay attention, 12th March 1913, Gandhiji along with their 78 followers march from Sabarmati Ashram, which is in Ahmedabad, Sabarmati Ashram, to the coastal town of Dandi. This incident is known in history as a Dandi March. Dandi March, where they broke the government laws by gathering natural salt found on the seashore and boiling sea water to produce the salt. Gandhiji's Dandi March marked the beginning of the civil disobedience. In this moment, when the people, they started as their march from the Sabarmati Ashram, they were the 78, but when they reaching till the coast of Dandi, coast of Arabian Sea, at a place of Dandi, there were more than 2 lakhs people were assembled. Different sections of people, they collectively support to the Gandhiji against of a British Empire. Against of British Empire. So this much for today. Today we discussed till as the 1915 towards 1930 civil disobedience movement. Till 1930. 30. Any questions?